Good morning, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us today for the webinar entitled Why Isn't Anyone Happy with Their Monitoring Solution? My name is Matt Crane. I'm sitting in for Jesus, who is our sales manager today. He's off as a late absence for us, so you've got myself. For those of you that have joined maybe our other blog white webinars, you'll know that these sessions are focused on helping users improve monitoring platforms. Some of our other sessions have covered topics such as advanced alerting, automation, and the most recent one we did was on customized reporting, obviously using the SolarWinds products as a showcase for that. So today's subject, we're going to be covering the common things that people find that are wrong with monitoring platforms and how SolarWinds in particular may do things differently to how you're doing things, but how SolarWinds will manage some of those common issues that we find users are experiencing. So there's a few bits to it. Obviously, in terms of, I'll be handing over to my colleague Mark Roberts, who's our technical director here at Prosperon Networks, and Mark will take you through some various scenarios and aspects of monitoring using the SolarWinds platforms. But also touching upon common areas, as I've mentioned. Just a little bit before we get started on that about Prosperon. Some of you may know us. We've been a partner for SolarWinds for nearly 12 years. We, as a partner, provide a great deal of professional services, and we have a close relationship with the vendors. So you'll see us taking part with some of the vendors at yearly events, the Thwack Camp events, which is where users get together with the vendors and share ideas, roadmaps. We have obviously engineers going on site 400 or 500 days a year at the moment. And obviously we have a lot of support cases going on where we will typically support the monitoring platforms that we put in. In terms of moving things forward today, I just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up in terms of some of the things we'll be covering. We are going to have some interactive events in this, and the first interactive thing we're going to do is via a poll, which is where we'd like some feedback from yourselves in terms of what your experiences are with your own monitoring solutions. So I'm just going to launch the first poll there, and we'd be really, really grateful if you guys could select some of those choices, or the choice where you see your biggest pain points with current monitoring tools. Once we get some answers back in, Mark and I are going to talk about those results that we've seen. So we'll just leave it to go a little bit longer. Some of you are coming in and answering them, so that's great. The more the merrier. Okay, so we should be seeing on your screen, and someone jump in if that's not happening.
There's a surprise, Matt.
What's that? Is it working?
Yeah, it's definitely working as normal. Drowning in alerts, number one.
Drowning in alerts. Okay, well, we're going to touch on that a little bit later on, Mark, aren't we? So it's not a surprise to us, as Mark says, it's a common thing. Ensuring you have the right information is obviously a massive part of that. We do see, and alerting comes in as part of that, of course, also, but in terms of some of those reporting aspects as well, ensuring you're seeing the right information, not just via reports that you can share up there, but so obviously in real time, getting that right information will help you make the right decisions. So, Mark, I think here I'm handing over to you. I'm going to hide the poll out and change presenter to yourself.
Thank you very much, Matt. Let me just get there we go. So good morning, everybody. As Matt says, I'm the technical director here at Prosperon. So I'm today going to take you through these areas where we see common issues that people have difficulties with, that are going to affect their coverage of monitoring. And so we've kind of broken it up into three parts, and this is all related around recent blog that we put up on our site and shared on the Thwack website as well, because these are things that I say we see on a regular basis. We want to make sure that people have an understanding about how they can be dealt with. So if we just move on to the first slide here, and the first section is really about this concept of what to monitor. It's very important for people to understand actually what is genuinely worth monitoring, and understanding the devices they've got, the applications they have, the infrastructure that they operate within, and therefore that is all going to define what is useful to capture. And that can be very daunting for people. We are often on calls with customers and in the professional services engagements, having workshops with them and taking everyone through the concept of actually what do we determine what we monitor? What is an appropriate level of monitoring? How do we identify what the devices and the infrastructure can give us in terms of monitoring? So from that point of view, there's a lot of resources. SolarWinds are very, very good out of the box of giving you guidance on the things that you do want to monitor. So for example, and we've got a reference here to SAM, in the fact that if you have the server and application monitoring solution, then there are a large range of out-of-the-box templates for very common enterprise applications. We'll see that they are very good starting points, and I do say starting points. Everything that you're going to see within a monitoring solution is not the absolute finished article. When you install something out of the box in terms of SolarWinds, there are things which you're going to tick and you're going to think, oh, job done. No, everything does need reviewing.
So Mark, on that, in terms of, obviously we're doing a lot of professional services on site and talking to a lot of customers before we arrive on site in terms of how they wish their, particularly with this aspect with SAM in mind, the application monitoring, how often are we changing templates for customers? Is it a regular thing?
All the time. Yeah. I'd say if, say for example, you have a look at the Active Directory SAM template that's provided, there are 38 individual monitors in there, and typically we cut that down to around 12, because are they useful? Are they giving information to people which they're going to act upon? We'll have a look at that when it comes to alerting in a moment. And that's very much the thing here, is actually identifying genuine data metrics that is relevant for your for their environment. So you mentioned there, Matt, in terms of when we have an engagement with a customer, one of the first things we'll do is ask for an inventory. What device types do they have? We don't really care how many they've got. It's, have they got checkpoints? Have they got FortiGate firewalls? Are they running NetScalers for Citrix? When we look at that and we understand the applications, the device types that the customer has, we can then go to our library and then give them guidance and say, okay, these are the monitors that we were probably going to want to be capturing. Let's review with you and confirm.
So we mentioned AD as being one, but obviously there are some other ones that are really crucial, like SharePoint Exchange, also all those kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah, and as I said, the great thing is that SolarWinds provide those templates automatically, and it's just a case of enablement, but reviewing them is the big thing that we're highlighting here.
Okay.
So other good resources that I've put at the top of this slide here, THWAC. There's an area on the THWAC website. If you're not familiar with THWAC, it's the SolarWinds community website, and under each of the kind of product areas, there is a section called the Content Exchange. So for example, if you go into the Network Performance Monitor Content Exchange, you will see that there are ones for reports, there are ones for custom SNMP pollers. If you go to NCM, there are policy reports, there are device template reports for doing backups and config changes. So this is a really useful area to go and say, okay, I've got a NetScaler. What are other people monitoring on a NetScaler? Can I learn from that? Can I actually just download and apply someone else's template because they've done that work for us? And that's a really powerful way of getting going with the monitoring coverage. So let's say once you get an understanding of the device types that you have, the applications that you have, the network topology, i.e. do I want to monitor the path performance between sites, that is going to lead you down a path of understanding the profile that you monitor. Now, there are some challenges. There are some very big challenges here. And the very first statement that I've got there, is there such a thing as capturing too much data? Well, yes, absolutely. Does that mean you don't? No. By that, I'm referring to the fact that you could look at something and say, well, there seems to be an awful lot of information here. I gave the example in terms of Active Directory. you're looking at those monitors lists, you're seeing what is relevant for you. And from that point of view, you're then determining what level of control do I need to apply. And that level of control is very much going to be then a situation where you're identifying how you present this data.
So on that, Mark, obviously you'll know we work with some very large installations, whose obviously the platform on the SolarWinds side is quite complex. But with this in mind in particular, you know, this large volume of the data and the control, how do we help them in this aspect? How do we help them control that volume of data?
Good question. So this is very much what this slide's about. So we've got customers out there with 40,000, 50,000 devices being monitored by their Orion platform that have got hundreds of applications, that have got thousands of custom pollers pulling data back. You could look at that and say, well, oh my God, we're going to be overwhelmed with information. Well, there is going to be inherently a huge amount of data that's collected. But if you control the presentation, if you structure your pages, your summary pages, and target the audience, you target the device types. So we'll have a look in the demo in a moment, Matt, and I'll show you the fact that we've got a custom page layout that's utilizing subtabs, that's creating filters. So we have that level of control. As I say, when you're monitoring SQL Server, there are out of the box with just one database populated on it, over 150 individual monitors. What are the genuine ones of use? Well, not all of them, obviously, but there are some which you're going to want to touch on now and again, but there are other ones which you want to know every day. How are they running?
I think we've seen quite a lot of out-of-box installations in our time, haven't we?
Yeah.
Say when we come back to that first poll, the amount of data, the alerting data, is extraordinary sometimes what we see there.
It sounds as if you might be catching my cold.
I hope not, my friend.
Please don't blame me. So, as I say, in terms of this, when you come to large-scale environments, you're understanding the infrastructure, as I said before, you're identifying the priority items on there, and then you're creating customized presentation, alerting definitions. So we'll see how we can define what we do and do not alert on, for example. And then we're making sure that the right people see that information. There is no point a firewall engineer looking at the volume performance on a SAN. It has absolutely no bearing or realm of involvement in their role. So we want to again make sure that we create presentation views and alerting definitions that give those people that information. Okay, so let's change over to our demo now. So hopefully here you can see that I have, so let's just refresh this, it's probably logged out. So I'm just going to start off because I want to make sure everyone is aware of the Orion online demo. This is a publicly available area that you can all go and have a look at. You can have a play around with. All of the modules are installed, for example. There's lots of example data there. Be careful, there are lots of areas which kind of take you down to a blind alley of little information, but it certainly is a very useful resource to see what's going on. Now, this is a starting point for me in terms of what we're talking about today. Is great because we can see here that we've got a dashboard, and this dashboard immediately has too much information on it. I haven't got separation, for example, between my physical memory. Yep, I've got devices on here, I've got servers on here, same with my volumes. There's data which, as I say, we haven't got full control over. So what we want to have a look at seeing here is that how can we get that control back? So I'm actually going to go across to our platform here, and I'm going to show you a couple of neat areas that allow us to put some function in place. Now, if you're not using the default current top 10 page, please do. This is such a useful page. This allows us to populate common issues, common utilization metrics that are going to be affecting performance. Now, one of the first things you can see on here is that on the right-hand side, we've got top 10 volumes by disk space used. Well, we've got memory things in here, and we've got cached memory, which is showing 100%. Well, cached memory is always going to be 100%. It's meant to be 100%. It's full. It's doing its job. So immediately, we've got three slots field up here, that's always going to show 100%. It's always going to be red. It's always drawing me attention, my ISO attention, which actually is not valid. So what we're just going to do is put a quick filter on here, and you can see that I've got the ability to write a query here. Now this is literally just a where clause in a SQL statement. Now if you expand these out, you will see there are links to the kind of things that we can put in. I'm using here the volume type, and I'm putting fixed disk, actually. Let's get my wording correct. So there is a volume type called fixed disk, and now when we submit this, we're going to get our response come back, and those memory items are now missing. Now I've got true visibility.
That's a little bit clearer, isn't it, for a start?
Yeah. And also up here on the left-hand side, you can see that I've got latency. Well, the response time value, let me just fix that. I want to make sure that I don't have devices that are down because their latency or packet loss is going to be high. I don't want those populating. What I also want to show you here is when I customize this page, that this has got network devices on it. This has got servers on it. This has got volumes and data that's maybe relevant for different teams. So maybe I wanted to create one here for the network team. And so I'm going to give it a new name. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a limitation on this. And this allows me to choose a limitation that determines what the device function is. Now, from this point of view, this list here, you might look at it and go, well, it's quite overwhelming. It's really not. There are some very common situations in here. You can see that we've got things based on node name patterns. So maybe you've got a naming convention for your devices, which you could use as a method. Well, I've actually created a custom property, and I've called it category because I want to know the difference between network devices, server devices, voice devices, security, all these kind of things. So now when I look at this page, every single resource that's shown on this page now is only going to get populated with network devices.
So that's a clear example, I guess, of the importance of creating roles within not just SolarWinds, I guess, but with any monitoring tool. So the right users see the right information particular to their role, which is this is an example of, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah. Now I'm being very quick and dirty here, obviously, in terms of time today. But what we would typically do is duplicate the current top 10 page. We would literally just adjust some of the content that's on there because we don't need this components on here. This for application data, for example. And so from that, we would then save it and then add it to the network homepage menu. So here we would have a network top 10, this page. So those network engineers very quickly can go and look at a targeted page for themselves. Okay, so I'm also going to show you an example, and from this point of view, we're going to show you an example how out of the box Orion provides a default node details page. So we have a page here, and I'm also going to open up a page for my Windows server. And do the demo gods smile upon me, or am I asking? Yes, it looks like, there we go. So I'm just opening up here when I can see it. There we go. So I'm showing you that we've got here a default node details page. Now, a default node details page means out of the box when you install Orion, it's going to use this page layout. Now, this page layout is okay. It's a great starting point. I keep mentioning starting point. And I've opened up, in this case, a storage device. And what we can see here is data that is relevant for a storage device, but actually it's not tuned. I'm not seeing here the #1 metrics for storage. #1 metrics for me on storage is what my storage capacity is, what my IO performance is, how many connections I've got to storage, how many LUNs I've got delivered. That is not shown on this. So because this default page is not putting that information front and center, I want to be able to take control of that. So I need to look at the device types that I've got, identify how I want to present information, because yes, this is all very good, but again, it's not saying your number one metric for storage is consumption and performance. So I want that chart on my first screen. I want it so I'm not having to scroll down and look all the way down here. And the other thing you can see here is that we've got widgets that have no data in them, because layer 3 information is not relevant for a storage device. It's not appropriate. So what we have here is an example of a tuned custom page. So this is a Windows No Details page. I can look at this and immediately I can say, okay, I've got some alerts active on this. I can see the number of inbound connections to my application. So in this case, I can see that I've got a certain number of connections to IIS, port 80, for example. I can see my patch status, CPU and memory, the performance of my applications that are being monitored. But also on the left-hand side here, if I just blow this out, you can see that we've built a structure that breaks down this information. I won't go into full details on here, but I have around 300 individual monitors assigned to this single server. So I need to make sure that I control the presentation. 50 of them may be storage, 30 of them may be network, traffic profile. So I can see how much network traffic is going in and out and how much IS is consuming. So hopefully your understanding from what we're going through here is you don't need to be overwhelmed, but it's just a case of understanding and then putting structure in place.
So, I mean, in the first poll, nearly half of you selected ensuring you're seeing the right information in your monitoring tool, which I'm hoping obviously you'll see through Mark's demo quickly there on this part of the session, how quickly and how easily it is within SolarWinds to get that key information through dashboards, but also through reports as well.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on to alerting, but before I do, because I'm on this page, I just want to draw your attention to the fact that we've got a custom page per device that allows us to identify the alerts that this device has been generating. So we can use this as a kind of analysis area, which we'll come to in this next section. Okay, so let's go.
Just quickly on that, Mark, I mean, if any of you got questions on the previous part, the information share, the look and feel of SolarWinds, feel free to ask some questions in the chat window that you can see, and we can come to them at the end.
Yeah, please do. Questions we love in these demonstrations. Okay, so I'm just struggling here to change over to my SharePoint, to my slide deck.
I can't see you as a presenter,
yeah.
But have you there?
There we go. Is that? No, that's the wrong one. Come on now.
Technical glitch.
I know, it's very odd.
It wouldn't be us if we didn't have technical glitches every so often.
Of course. So let's just. That's really odd.
Let's just see while you're doing that if we got some questions in.
Yeah, please. While I just fix this.
The questions come in. Obviously, we appreciate some of you guys are obviously quite new to SolarWinds, but some questions have come in, Mark, just in terms of the overall coverage of SolarWinds in terms of the information it provides. Obviously, we've talked a lot about networking there, a little bit of storage, previously Sam, but there are other aspects of SolarWinds that can be covered in terms of virtualization, as well as sort of database performance monitoring as well, if we've got any DBAs with us today. So there's a whole raft of modular products to fit into Orion. And obviously we'll be following up with some of you after the session, and we can have a bit more of a detailed chat about those individual requirements that you have. I see you got your screen back, Mark. So
I fixed it. Thank you.
We'll continue on.
Excellent, thanks. So the next section is about alerting. Now, this is something that we touch on a regular basis. From our point of view, it's a big area of configuration, of control, and so certainly things that are going to affect you. you put in the poll that one of your biggest pain points was alerting. And you can see actually on this graphic here, this is something that is a common scenario, certainly when it comes to email. And when you install Orion, when you turn on alerting and you enable them and configure your email settings, you are going to get more alerts coming out than you want. The reason for that is very simple. SolarWinds do not know your environment. They do not know everyone's environment. So what they're doing is putting a framework in place to say, these are common things to monitor. These are common scenarios that you're going to want to receive an alert on, but then you need to put tuning in there. You need to make sure that it's tuned to your environment, to your thresholds, to your usage of your infrastructure. And so we have two common industry terminology items here. So alert fatigue, and this is an example of alert fatigue. When I see a customer with that kind of quantity of alerts unread in a mailbox, well, for a start, they're creating a subfolder, fine. It's email, you're going to do that. You're going to create a filter and put it in there. But clearly that person is not looking at these messages. They've got to the point where they're getting so many alerts per day that they can't keep up and they're just wasting time. But the problem with that clearly is they're going to miss things. Yep. Alerting is there to tell you about things. The second item there is that we've got alert storms. So this is where you get a situation where maybe you've got a router and there are 50 devices sat behind the router at a remote site. Well, if you lose the router, Orion loses the ability to pull the devices behind it, and assuming there's no multipathing going on. So from that point of view, that's going to generate 51 alerts, when reality is that we've lost one device. So we want to make sure that we have the ability to control that. We want to use groups and we want to use dependencies that has a child-parent relationship that prevents those issues occurring. You may be in a situation where you get flooded with a lot of alerts in one go, and you can work it out very quickly, but then you've got to delete all of those alerts. Or if they're raising help desk tickets, you don't want to be doing that. And then the last item there is making sure the right people are getting the right alerts at the right time. And I could also add many other things on here in the right format, with the right content in it, with the right protocols, i.e. is this an SMS? Is this a Slack message or a Teams message or something along those lines?
So Mark, before we get into this part of the slide, obviously for the SolarWinds customers that we have, we're providing what we call it internally here a health check service on those SolarWinds platforms that we manage. So this is, again, the alerting side of it. This is something that we're commonly seeing on those health check reports that we're sending out to customers. As
the people on the webinar have indicated, alerting is a pain point. So when we do these health checks and we identify that a customer's got 300 active alerts and their oldest alert is 98 days old, this is for us an immediate sign that alert control needs to be applied.
Sure.
Yeah, so there are clear indicators on those kind of situations that
I guess it's part of that. When we're implementing these solutions, very quickly, so they carry on. When we're implementing these solutions, this is why this part, that pre-installation that we go through with customers is so crucial. So they get the right alerts from the get-go, so they can start seeing that return on investment on that solution straight away, rather than 6 months down the road, probably falling out of love with the solution because it's just not giving them that right information, or it's giving them too much noise.
Yeah, and it's not the fault of the monitoring system. It's it just needs definition. It needs understanding, and it needs alert analysis. We'll come on to that in a moment. So from this, if you do an installation from scratch on any monitoring solution, do not turn on every email. Do not configure every alert. Do not configure email immediately because you don't understand what your baseline is. You need to baseline. You need to identify tuning that needs to take place. So you want to do this as a gradual process. You need, in the first instance, to review which ones you need. And as I say, we'll have a look in a moment in the demo that SolarWinds provide a lot of alerts out of the box. You need to identify who should be receiving them. How are they going to be sent? As I said before, email is the most common. A bit of a soapbox for me, it is not the best, because ownership. Who is actually taking ownership? If 5 people get an email to say that a node has gone down, they've then got to communicate somehow to determine who's going to take ownership of that. Email does not really allow that. There are much better ways, whether you're using instant messaging platforms, whether using alert management platforms such as Everbridge, and from that you can certainly have a lot better visibility, auditing and management of those. When I say externalized alerts, I'm basically grouping into a whole pool anything where you're sending notifications, be it email, be it a Slack message, be it a ticket. You need to make sure that the only ones that you sent out are ones that genuinely need to be actioned. Use alerting to create informational points, but ones that you actually send out notification, they should be the only ones that people are going to do something about. Go and fix, go and remediate. This whole mean time to resolution aspect, they're the ones that are going to come into play on that. Also about management within Orion. Orion is not an alert management platform. It's there to monitor. It has an alerting engine. There is an acknowledge function in there that allows you to tune, but certainly you need to have a process in place to keep this. And you also need to make sure your alerting that comes out has the right information in it. If you've got an engineer receiving an SMS at 2 o'clock in the morning, you want to make sure that the information that's in that message is enough for them to make a decision about whether they get out of bed and go and fix something. Where do they go? What's the impact? Is it something that they can look and say, well, actually, this is a device that's running in the US at the moment, and at this time of day now, they've actually left work, so I can deal with this in the morning. That kind of thing is vital. Oh, and that last one on there actually was a case of create as few alerts as possible. We've had customers where I'll go along and there's over 1,000 alerts defined. It's insane. I'd say, how do you manage this? And they say very quickly, they can't, they don't. So we want to make sure we create as few as possible.
Absolutely. Okay, time for our second poll. So let me just launch that. Back on, still on the alerting theme. So do you feel your alerting is under control? So guys, give us some feedback here in terms of where you are. Obviously, you said that a lot of you said that alerting is you've got alerting issues. Probably going to get the same feedback back, but let's just see where we get. I'm just going to hang fire for a few more answers to come in, and then we share the results with you. Okay. Okay, you should see some on your screen. Some of you are drowning. So we can see there, we've got a lot of you saying we know we need to improve how alerts are directed, and that again is not a surprise. It's a everyday occurrence, conversations that we have with customers. Everybody understands the importance of these alerts, but not everybody has necessarily got the knowledge or maybe the resource internally to tackle that configuration of those alerting engines that you have. Mark, have you got anything else on that?
No, again, that really confirms some of the key areas in the fact that this is a common situation where it just needs some review, understanding about why they're generated and how to take them out of the equation. So
it's interesting there that there's no one has picked the last one in there in terms of integrating into alert management or ticketing solution. See something we see a lot that we'll probably be going to be doing in our next upcoming webinar. Actually, we're going to be covering integrations, Mark, a little bit more, aren't we?
Yeah.
So that's something for you guys to keep an eye on. You'll all get probably invited into that. But in the next webinar, we're covering integration, particularly with SolarWinds in mind, obviously into the likes of Service Desk and into CMDB as well. So that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and certainly automation is a big thing. We're spending a lot more time than ever working with customers to automate. So yeah, that webinar would be a really good point for that. Okay, so I'm coming into what I would consider to be the #1 most important thing of any successful Orion deployment, and that's custom properties. So custom properties are the ability for you to create additional data columns in the database and associate it with an object. So think of this as a spreadsheet where against the node table where you're capturing and storing the node name, the IP address, its community string, its CPU value, its memory value, all these kind of things. This is literally just adding another column, and it's allowing us to put information in it. So from that point of view, getting a structure in place that we can use for filtering. You saw when we were doing the top 10, I used a custom property for category. And that allowed me to define whether it's a network device, a server device, a security device, etc. So what we're going to do here is just create a new custom property. And you'll see how very simple this is. So we're going to see that we've got a number of different object types. We're going to keep this simple and do node. And we're going to use node priority. Now, I don't think it's out of the realms of understanding for you to know that different nodes have different importance ratings. There you go. So from this point of view, we're going to create a 3-tier value. And we're going to do this using numbers because I want to use less than, greater than conditions in my alerts maybe. And I'm making sure that people fill it in. And I'm going to put 1, 2, and 3. The reason for this is that I can go through and I can say, okay, I've got some devices that are more and less important than others. So here, I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to say, well, yeah, I've got my router, I've got my voice exit point, I've got my firewall, I've got my etc. my print server, my SQL database server. So I'm going to add a few here. Obviously, you would be more complete. So immediately what I've done here is I've created a structure and said that I want to define something as important. Yeah, there are print servers which are going to be important. There are printers which aren't going to be important. There are going to be devices that are not going to cause your business to stop working, that are going to be P3. But there are also going to be devices that, yes, you're going to want to send that SMS at 1 o'clock in the morning to the engineer to make sure that they get things fixed. So we've created the custom property. I'm now going to go to the alert management page. And so here we've got manage alerts. And this is just as a point of quick review. You can see that in our installation, now we do have a lot of custom ones in here, I have to let you know, but out of the box, if for example you have all of the modules, you're going to have over 300 alerts pre-provided by SolarWinds. There are categories, you can see areas of coverage. So if you've got storage monitoring, for example, these are the sample ones. Some of them are enabled, some of them are not.
I was going to ask, Mark, by default, are all of them enabled or
No.
not? No, okay.
And that goes back to my previous point. You don't want to enable all of these immediately.
Not.
Because this one here, or these 3 here, and this is why I've chosen it, your LUNs have different tiering. Some are going to be SASDIS, some are going to be Flash. They have different values. So for that, we would need to create, or we would want to create custom properties or create a filter. Maybe it's the naming convention of the LUNs that says actually the target for this one is 5 to 10, but actually the target for these other ones is 2 to 4. So we need to go in and edit these, and we need to put those filters in. So I'm just going to come across here, and what I'm going to just do, you're going to see here I've got, we refer to these as our best practice alerts. So these are going to be ones which we'll commonly install as part of our customer deployments. So I'm just going to duplicate this. And what I want to do here is do a P1. And I would have filled in a lot more information in terms of the SMS, but just from time perspective, I would have in the description put the fact that this is a P1 device alert, that we're going to be sending SMSs, we're going to be sending messages to Slack, we're going to be raising a ticket in Jira or ServiceNow or whatever. And so from this point of view, we might choose some custom properties on the alert. But what I've got here is a trigger condition that says, by default, if any node is equal to down, send an alert. We'll have a look at the actions in a moment, but from here, that is any alert, any node. And therefore, if I've got 10,000 devices, they're all going to be handled exactly the same. That's not what I want. So I'm going to put a condition in here. I'm going to come down to my custom properties, and here you will see node priority. And I can choose one of the values. Yep. So this is my P1 device now. Yep. So now, and you can see how quickly this is. This has taken me a matter of seconds. And I can choose reset condition. In this case, what I'd probably be doing is saying that my P1 device is now up, and it has been for 20 minutes. Now, the reason I'm doing that is because maybe a device is going up and down, it's bouncing. What this will allow me to do is control what we refer to as alert flapping. And so I want it to be up, and I want it to be continuously up for 20 minutes without any issues before I reset. Now, that could be 1 hour, it could be whatever value you like. And then I've got my time of day action period, and then I've got my actions. Now, in terms of this is about controlling, and as you can see, the default ones here is going to send an email. It's going to create an event log. Well, actually, what I'm likely to do is come in here and send an SMS. I might be creating an incident in my service now. I may be creating here an interaction to my Slack or my Microsoft Teams environment. I might be posting this to Everbridge for alert management control. So all of these kind of things, as I say, are now within your sphere of visibility to take control of that configuration. So that is a very quick example of saying, I don't want the default node down alert. I need to create different ones for P1 devices. You can see here, critical interfaces. That's even more important. If you think about how, if you've got 1,000 nodes, you've probably got many thousands more interfaces being monitored in your environment. Again, you need to use that priority structure, maybe WAN interfaces, those kind of things coming through.
So cool. Those alerts with different priority settings, Mark, they can all go to different roles entirely, can't they? A P3 could go to a help desk, maybe, possibly a bad example. But the P2s, the P1s can go to more sort of second, third line engineering.
Yeah, if you remember, several years ago, we were working with an oil company, and we actually created an alert that puts a light on, one of those rotating lights on in the server room. It's like these things can be done. Okay, so just in terms of closing down this section here, because we are running a little bit over. Oh, stop, don't want to do that. I've got the alert analysis page. I showed you previously the node detail page. This is the global one, and this very quickly and easily allows me to identify alerts that are being generated by our platform, and we can see that we've got clear visibility in the fact that there's one device that generates the vast majority of alerts. Yeah, so 563 alerts were generated in a single day on the 28th of March. That is totally not something we want to be doing. We can see here that this is all to do with F5 GTM layer. So from that, we can identify that we've got clearly either a misconfigured alert definition, or we've got a device that's just broken and needs fixing. So again, we're using, in this case, reporting analysis to get some intelligence out of the platform to then go and make decisions on how we then tune our alerting. Okay, that's that for that section. Okay. I am conscious of time, so I'm going to skip through a little bit quicker than I was intending to, so sincere apologies for this. If anyone in this section has any questions, any follow-ups, actually on any of the things we've just discussed today, please let us know. We're more than happy to have one-on-one sessions with you guys. So this last section is about automation. Matt, you mentioned it previously, and so we are seeing more and more of this with customers. resources are tight.
Mm.
The ability to automate functionality is important. What we're looking at today is about how we ensure that we've got the devices and applications being monitored by Orion. From this, we need a process. When a device is commissioned in an environment, when an application is installed in an environment, we need to make sure that that information comes to the monitoring administrator because they need to add it to their monitoring platform. If that communication doesn't come in and the device goes down, or the application is slow, or it doesn't work, or it consumes too much resources and affects everything else, we're not going to have visibility. And it undermines the importance and the value of our monitoring platform. So we need to make sure that we have that procedure. We need to make sure that when things are added to an environment. Now, at the bottom, actually, I'll skip to the bottom and come back to the middle. If you have an ITSM platform, like Remedy, like ServiceNow, like Sherwell, like many others, or a CMDB for asset management, these are often the authoritative sources. These are going to be the platforms that are updated. Now, you may just generate a report. You may say, okay, what devices have been added today? Okay, I'm going to go and make sure they get added to Orion. But we do have a lot of customers that are synchronizing functionality into and out of these platforms. So, for example, the custom properties, you're going to have CIs, configuration items in these application platforms, ITSM and CMDB. Synchronizing that data into the Orion platform means you've got good data quality. It means you've got the data in there, so the filtering is going to work. You're not going to miss the fact there's a P1 event. So it's not going to allow you to, it's going to allow you to then manage maintenances. So if you've got a 4-hour maintenance window on a device, maybe you apply that in your change management platform, it's ITSM. If that's automatically applied to Orion, that means that you don't get alerts during that window, and you're correctly controlling the alerting that's going to come out during that time period. So from this, the issue that we have when we don't have coverage, we have situations where things are going to get missed. That visibility on understanding of being able to identify the impact in the environment are all going to be affected. So Matt, if you just want to run that last poll up for me, please.
I sure will. There we go.
Thank you. So here we just want to get a little bit of an understanding about how far you're going. As you can see, there's a kind of order to this as to how manual a process it is, whether you are automating. This is obviously useful for us to see.
Okay, let me just share those results. There we go.
Okay. All right, so that's interesting. 20% of you are integrating and cross-referencing to a CMDB. Now, say that may be manual, that may be automatic, but let's say you are using that authoritative source, which is great to see. Okay, so I'm just going to go across back to my demo again. Sorry, just needed a bit of a cough there. So what we're going to have a look at here very quickly is the discovery process. So under network discovery in Orion, this was something that came along in recent versions, is that we have the ability to automatically go out and discover the environment and add those objects to Orion without any intervention. So this is a kind of wizard. It takes us through a journey, asking us questions that allow it to do its job function. And the first question you have is, what range? How are we defining how we scan this environment? Now, the top three are very much about go off into a network environment, scan a subnet, scan from this IP to this IP, and anything that you find it may be right for inclusion. What I'm going to do here is be a bit more intelligent about this and go to an AD server. And I'm just going to test that. And what this is going to do is going to allow me to bring back all of my OU hierarchy and say, well, actually, any time a new server is added to this group, maybe this group and another group, I want it to be included in Orion. Okay, so now this is automatically going to scan the devices that exist in the OU definition servers. I could here provide credentials if I know that that scan definition is going to include virtual resources, i.e. vCenter, ESX hosts. That screen is just there to upgrade and update agents if necessary. If there are network devices that are going to come back, which SSH authentication do I want to use? My SNMP credentials, my Windows credentials. So basically all of these are going to be ones which are likely to be used. And then this is the important bit. This is the new area. First of all, do I only import devices that are responding to management protocols, i.e. SNMP, WMI, or the agent? And then I've got the settings here about, well, what is going to get included? So what interfaces? Well, okay, only the ones that are up. What type of interfaces? Am I only interested in physical? Am I only interested in where the name of the interface has uplink in it? Because now I'm only interested in up and down links, perhaps. So from this point of view, this wizard again is defining what and what will not get imported. You define the values that are appropriate. If we find any of these objects on there, do we automatically import those applications as well? And ignore the ports one. This is for the user device tracker module. And then I can choose the settings. So I'm going to give it this a description. I'm going to give it a name. So Active Directory Server Import Weekly Scan. And then the last will then allow me to run this on a defined frequency. So on this point of view, I might run it every Saturday at 12 o'clock. Okay, and so from that, oh, did I not tick that? And so now that's going to schedule, and then these devices will automatically get imported into Orion. Now, if I'd have selected the manual item there, what would happen instead, I'm going to go back to the Orion demo, is it will pop up this notification and it will tell me that, okay, I'm not automatically importing this. I can manually review and I can say from that weekly scan, which devices do I want to bring in? And this is a confirmation I can come through, get an email to tell me this has happened, and then bang, import it manually. So whether you go fully automatic, semi-automatic, then that's all good. So yep, I was rushing through and pressing buttons I shouldn't have done. So that's the first thing. We've got that discovery profile. Well, what we can also do with this is automatically assign applications. So there are common scenarios where we want to make sure that dynamic environments are catered for. And one of the most common that we see are things like Citrix or SharePoint farms, where new servers are going to get spun up and spun down on a regular basis, and we want to make sure that we're covering them automatically for monitoring. This could be a very quick turnaround. A server may only be up for an hour or two. Certainly with regards to things like containers, this is proving more relevant. So from this, we can see that we can create our groups. So I'm in groups already. Now I've already staged this, so I'm very quickly going to just show you the properties. So essentially what we have here is a rule that says if the custom property application is Citrix, then include that node in this group. Okay, fantastic. So we have a group. We have the custom property that when we add, so here, oh no, don't want to edit, wrong one, sorry, I'm rushing here. When we have this application, and maybe we manually come in here and say this is Citrix, save those changes, and here, when I find groups, there we go, can't see it for looking. So now this Citrix group is going to have that entry in it. And then what we have is the ability for us to look at the application. So if I go to settings, SAM settings. And if I click on the Manage Templates, you will see, as I referenced before, that out of the box, lots and lots and lots of templates provided. So just very quickly, if I scan and scroll down here, you can see I've got a large number. Citrix, so here I'm running Citrix 6. So maybe all of these, I want to assign it to a group. And here, Citrix assignment. Okay, so I'm going to assign the groups. So now just to run through what's going to happen is when a device is added and Citrix is of value in the custom property, those 5 templates in SAM are automatically going to get assigned to them. Now I can take that a little bit further, and I do apologize, this is going to go very, very slightly over. If I go back to my alerting, you will see that I have my Citrix auto assignments here, and you will see that what we have in this definition is a little bit of custom query code, and we're actually looking at the inventory. So when Orion adds a server, it will download all of the installed applications that exist on a server. And in this case, we are looking for a service name that exists called Citrix MFCom. And for any that do, we are automatically going to change the custom property value. So we are going to insert the custom property value of Citrix. So now we have a fully automatic window. We've got the discovery that goes into my Active Directory. It pulls back the servers. It will bring in new servers that are found. It will do an inventory against it. It will identify and store in the database the fact that Citrix is installed. We are taking an alert and we're finding that value. We're then inserting Citrix as a keyword into the custom properties. We're appending it here, as you can see. And because that is then going to get included in a group, because the filter is there, it's automatically then going to assign it the Citrix template in SAM. Quite a lot to go through there in a short space of time. So I do apologize for that. But again, it's a good taster for the kind of things you can do.
Absolutely. Okay. We do have some questions, Marcus. Have you got anything more to show us here, or can we move on to some questions?
I'm done.
Okay, no worries. Thank you for staying with us. A couple more minutes. That's all we need. We have one question through, which probably applies to everybody. Some of you had to be pulled away to do other things. We appreciate that. We are sharing a recording of this webinar with yourselves. There'll be a follow-up email shortly after this session has ended. There'll be some other information in there, also probably some trial download information, I guess, but also a link to the webinar's recording. Mark, if we've got time, we've had a question in from Gavin, which is again something we come across in terms of the ability to share information with management roles.
Okay.
This is something I guess we might want to talk about in terms of on the dashboard subjects, but what are the key things when we go on site that the top tier management roles tend to ask for from us?
Can I say pretty pictures? Is that allowed?
You can say pretty pictures.
No, so that is a good example of what we were referring to before in the fact of creating tuned dashboards. Yeah. So for example here, if I go to data center, so this is on the online demo, by the way, so you can come and have a look at this. Is a dashboard that's focused only to objects and data metrics in a data center. So we want to see how much is going in and out of the data center, how much vSAN traffic is being generated, the communication quality between the objects. This is a page that's been put together for that purpose. If you have presentation that you need to show to management, then again, it's just about understanding what information they need to see. And commonly it's an SLA kind of thing. It's how much time was spent in a down period for this service? What is our current state? Have we got all systems up and running? So from our point of view, actually, if I show you our morning checklist page that we have.
Ah, you're going to be my next thing. You spelt it for me. Our favourite.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so
Morning
this is one of our absolute inclusions in all of our customer installations. We created this morning checklist. So this is a as is. What is the current state of affairs? What have I got to go and fix? What's been happening? So on this resource, there's a what have been the latest alerts that have been generated in the last 16 hours, since I was in the office last yesterday evening. What is my base today that I now need to go and look at? Now, we have customers that are spending hours a day doing this. So we want to make sure that we get this information front and center so they can scan it, make sure they're all okay, and carry on with the rest of their day job.
Perfect. Gavin, I hope that answered the first part of it, but we couldn't resist using one of our own special dashboards that we put in place for customers as well, which is Mark's just highlighted. I think we can probably wrap up here, Mark. We've gone a little bit over.
Yep.
Thank you everybody for sticking with us. That's no problem. I hope you found it useful. As I said, you're going to get a quick email from us with some key information regarding this session. But look out for some other sessions that are coming up, which I alluded to a little earlier. They are more SolarWinds centric. Obviously, we've shown you a little bit about SolarWinds, but the next one I think coming up is on that integration piece. We do have another session as well. I can't remember which one comes first, but we have another session on application monitoring alongside database monitoring and how SolarWinds handles those things. We will probably put that on the follow-up email. I don't have the dates to hand. Apologies on that. So again, thank you everybody. Appreciate your time. We'll look forward to speaking to you in the next coming weeks, hopefully.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.